So I'll just go through these.
Yeah.
You know, some of it you might know, some of it you might not. Some of it is Maya specific. Some of it is just my thought process around animations and my process. So what's this one? Hang on, let me go back. So here with layers, I use layers a lot. I know some people don't like layers, but I use them pretty much on every project, or most animations. They're just really good at saving time and keeping things organized and things like that. So let me see if I can see that. Yeah, so this one, obviously, base animation is a run cycle. I'll go back, forward run cycle. And then I just have a layer with, I think it's just the feet and the torso, and that's probably about it. And then I just, make a left strafe out of that. So if I change any of the timing on the up and down movement on the hips, or the timing of the base animation, most of it should come across. So, you can do this for multiple directions. I'll usually have like a forward run cycle Maya file, and then have like the left, the 45 on left and right. So then you have like 5 animations in one file, rather than having separate files that you then need to update. Yeah,
Yep.
it's just good to lay the stuff on top. I'll move on. Hold on. Again, another way of using layers. You can use, I use them for a lot of stuff, like breathing, directions, pose tweaks, and idle variants, and camera shakes. This one's showing a breathing animation, like an idle, right? So
Yep.
you see the base animation is basically just the pose, and that's it. And then, I have a breathing layer, and then I have like look left and right layers too. So if I do change the pose at all, like just the static pose, then all of that should come across, depending on how extreme the pose changes, but generally, all of that should come across still. And I guess when you're working in the industry as well, iteration is a big thing. So it's likely poses will change. So instead of having 4 different Maya files with, well, I guess instead of, if you have the breathing animation on the base layer as well, it's going to be, you're going to have to change that when you change the pose as well, and then probably start again.
Yep.
And then another one, where am I at?
That's actually one thing I do, not just for games, but if I've got characters that I need to keep alive, I'll always throw a breathe layer or something like that on an animation layer. It just helps so much, and then you can turn it off whenever you need to, and just animate your characters doing something, and then when they come to a pose, that idle's always built in. So it's definitely a good piece of advice. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, and another thing I use it a lot for is camera shakes and kind of vibration, things like, because then on the base layer you just have the camera movement, right? You can do that, and then you can add a camera shake. Hang on, let me stop that. A camera shake layer, and then you can just copy and paste the camera shake wherever you need it to happen, and it won't affect the keys on the base layer.
Awesome.
This is another little tip over here. One sec, I'll delete that. So one thing I do with layers, just in general, is only have the channels that I need. So right now for camera shake here, I'm just using the rotation. So you can select the ones you don't need and just click remove from selected layers. And then you'll only have the rotation on there. That's especially useful if you have things like parent switches and things on the channels, because that will get added to the layer, and that can cause weird glitches and things. If the switches are different on the layer and the base animation, it will just cause weirdness. So yeah, I would always just remove all the channels you don't need from the layer.
Yep.
And another good thing about layers is that you can key the weight of it. So, if you make a camera shake and then you need the same camera shake, but you don't want it to be as intense, you can still use the same keys, but you just key the weight so it's lower. So if I move forward a bit. Oh, another tip with layers. I would always just set a key before and after, and then only affect the middle part. So then anything before that and anything after it, it will be what it's like on the base animation layer.
Okay.
Because sometimes I can change this one. If I push that up, it would affect everything before it, which is pretty annoying. Because if you do that by accident and then you realize like the hand is like way in the air or something back here, yeah, you're gonna have to go back and adjust it. So yeah, I would usually do that. And then I don't know if you use Animbot, but this noise thing, I don't remember what it's called, it basically adds noise. So it's really useful for camera shakes, or if you're doing an animation where the character is charging something up, it's really useful for that. If you push it to the right, I think it's linear, right? So you can see how it's the same in terms of scale, but then if you push it to the left, it offsets it like that, so it's completely random.
Awesome.
So yeah, and then I've already mentioned the keying, but basically keying is very useful. So this is, hang on, I'll go back. See it down here? You got this button, and you can key the weight of the layer. Keep going. And then it should pop up here in the graph editor when you have it selected, and then you can just change the weight of it, which is just really useful for even things like breathing. If you want, if your breathing is too much, maybe you can just dampen it. You don't need to change the keys individually, just key the weight of it. This is a little tip that I learned years after starting Maya. It might be obvious. I don't know if people learn this, but you see how when I'm clicking on the channels up there, the graph editor doesn't change. There's just a little setting, I think it's off by default, called a sync selection in graph editor. When you do that, when you click a channel, it will only show you that channel.
Oh, nice.
And that's not super useful if it's just one control, but say if you've got multiple fingers and you want them all to crunch in or something, you can select all the controls and then, only click the Z rotation or something on the channel box, and it will show you all the controls, but only the rotate Z. So
that's so handy.
Otherwise, you have to go through and individually select them in the graph editor, right? So
I remember doing that painfully many times. So that's awesome.
So it's really useful. I think there's also an option called sync timeline display, which I don't use, but I think that will do the same thing, but for the timeline. So if you click the X translation, it'll only show you the keys on the timeline, but I never really found that to be super useful. I found it pretty confusing.
Okay.
I'd be like, where are my keys gone? Oh yeah, it's because I've got that accidentally selected.
Yeah, I
learned that years later, and it's just saved me a lot of time.
Awesome.
This is one I think most people know because it gets shared a lot, but using hotkeys, this is probably the only hotkey I use, really, a custom one. I'm a very simple animator in general, but yeah, I definitely recommend using this one. You can find it on Google. You don't have to memorize it. It just toggles the nodes curves on and off. I usually have it on Shift 2, so you can quickly turn it on and off. It's just very quick.
Great.
Moving on. This one's another one of those ones where you think it's really simple, but I know for a fact like some seniors I've worked with didn't know this. So it's the whole middle mouse button for copying and pasting keys. If you might know it, you might not, but if you click on a key and then middle click on another key, frame, sorry, it will kind of like keep it there, right? So that it's not changing. And then you can press S and it will paste the key. So you don't need to do the whole right click, copy right click paste. Yep. It's just a lot quicker, and it also hang on. Yeah, and another thing, I mean, you can also key only the translation or the rotation or whatever as well with that. So if you middle click and then press Shift W, then it will only paste the translation keys from that.
Oh wow!
From that one. S is everything. Shift W, E, and R is the translation and rotation.
And I guess one of the most handy things about the middle click copy and paste is, especially when you're in games and doing cycles and you want to make a change to the beginning position and then copy it over to the end position so it cycles nicely, right?
Yeah, exactly. I do that in the demo actually. I was going to bring it up.
Yep.
Oh, this one's more of like let's see. So yeah, this is about using VFX. I know a lot of people do this now. Yeah, I would just, if you don't, I would just start downloading a bunch of placeholder VFX.
Nice.
Because it's really useful when it comes to styling ideas. So on League, I did this a lot. So you can see, here's an example of why. See, I have this kind of shot here where it charges up, but then halfway through, I have that little charge, and that just adds an extra beat to it. So it kind of like gives a different impression of the shot. But I couldn't have done that without VFX really, unless I changed the animation, which I didn't want to do. I think it's just good for like adding those extra little beats. If you already have in your head, this is when you should start seeing the VFX or something like that, then just get used to doing that. You don't need to actually draw VFX. You can just, there's so many packs out there, like free packs or some paid ones where you can just grab them. I use After Effects, so I would just go into After Effects and add it afterwards. Like I'd play a blast and then add them afterwards. Yeah, this was really useful when kind of trying to sell ideas to like the team on League. So if I had like a character idea or a weapon idea, it was just really useful, because without that, I would have had to kind of like try and explain, oh, this is when I think the shot should happen and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, I used it on a bunch of other animations. That was not very interesting. Yeah, with this one, it's very simple, but I kind of wanted to show that Senna was like blasting out of somewhere, whereas without that little beam, it might just look like she's jumping out.
Yeah.
You can use. You don't actually have to use 2D VFX as well like this. I mean, I would just recommend using boxes in Maya. Setting like a semi-transparent cube or whatever, and just that's usually enough.
Just something that's going to sell the idea, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Some of them are a bit over the top. Yeah.
Have you ever found?
Sorry, go on.
There's been times when I've put in a placeholder or something like that, and the director's kind of said to take it out, or even though it's just a representation of an idea. Have you ever had that sort of come back to you?
I've had it with the VFX artists, not with the director.
Right.
So some VFX artists don't like it because, I mean, I can understand why, because it might put ideas in people's heads of like, this is how the VFX will look. And then when it doesn't look like that, because the VFX have different ideas, then, it causes issues with the team and the VFX artist.
Right.
And yeah, so some people don't like it. Some people do like it. I think if you just you know, do it in a way where you explain, you know, this isn't the VFX, you know, this is just placeholder, and making it as simple as possible. Like, this is too over the top, I would say, even. But even, like I said, just use Maya and just you do some simple boxes so it doesn't actually even look good. It just shows the timing of it. Or keep it very simple. Because some people don't like it.
Definitely communication is the key there. I've worked on a
Yeah.
movie where I needed an asset, so I just made a really bad asset out of a couple of shapes in Maya, and it got left in there right up until the shot was about to be finalized. And I asked, "Oh, do you have that rig for this asset here?" And they just kind of stare at me and go, "We thought this was it." I was like, "No, this was just a placeholder." And so they have to scramble to try and make this asset. It was only, you know, something on a piece of string, but still, make sure you communicate that this isn't the final, or this is what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, it's like a balance because, you know, the team, it helps overall, like, especially stuff like this, like to work out the timing and to sell an idea. Overall, that's helping the team to come to a decision, I guess. But then, you know, if you go too far, then it might annoy the VFX artist and, you know, put ideas in people's heads. So yeah, just be wary of it. I would try and keep it as simple as possible. And then I've spoken about these before. Oh, spoiler.
Oh.
So yeah, pose sheets. I think I've talked about these in a couple of videos. But yeah, they're basically just, again, they're really useful for selling ideas to the team. These are some that I did on League of Legends. Just usually using the proxy rig, so using the, you know, the textures are just flat and everything. But I usually use them to just, again, pitch ideas, you know. So let's go back a bit. So with Yumi, you know, she was kind of meant to be this lazy magical cat. So I just kind of took that, and that's all I really knew about her at that point. This is a very early rig, obviously. The textures aren't even the same. If you've played League, you'll know. But yeah, so I was just kind of like chucking ideas out there, like, oh, maybe she falls asleep and the book is kind of pulling on her tail to wake her up, or, you know, maybe this is how the magic happens. Maybe it flows through her. Maybe she can teleport in and out of the book. And these were just really quick. You know, I think I did them in like a day or two max. Just came up with some ideas, and yeah, and a lot of them end up going in. A lot of them went into the champ, actually. Like, we did the whole teleport thing, and yeah, there was just a lot of the laziness came across. Same with Yone. Yeah, I was just kind of pitching ideas of like poses that you could be in, and yeah, like I said, they're useful for pitching ideas, but they're also useful for just for yourself, for creating like a Maya file full of poses that you can then pull from. Because I always find that, for me anyway, the start of a project is where I'm at my most creative.
Right.
So, you know, 3 months down the line, when I need a random pose for something because the designer's had a new idea, it's a lot easier just to be like, oh yeah, I have like 10 poses that I could use, I guess, like that might fit. And usually one of them will fit for it and be perfect. But if you didn't have that, you'd have to go back to the start again and find a pose and find some reference, and, you know, when you don't really want to. So it's really useful for that as well, like creating like a pose library kind of thing.
Yeah. How much time would you spend on doing something like this?
Usually just like a day or two, maybe. And it's usually when I'm waiting for other things as well. Like, usually, because at least on League, we would usually get a really early rig, and then, you know, the designer would want to come up with more ideas, and nothing would be final, you know, especially with Yone, like that took a while to finalize design. So yeah, it would usually be the first thing I do. I'd grab reference, like I usually make a board on Pinterest or something, just full of poses, and then kind of go through them and try to adapt some of them to, you know, what could happen in his narrative and things. So like, you know, having maybe the mask could glow to show its full potential or whatever, you know. this as well. It's a smear.
Yep.
We ended up adding like a mesh for the sword so that it could do this. Because of this, because I said, you know, because he's going to be so fast, you need this kind of smear. So we added like a mesh to the sword, and then VFX added like a material to it later. But that was really useful.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few here as Rel. I didn't work on Rel's animations, but I did a quick pose sheet for that just to kind of show how she might manipulate the metal and things around her her armor. And how she could sit on the horse, like just little poses like that. I mean, they don't have to be the best poses in the world. It's just more for selling ideas, you know, like some things that she could do. Maybe it might inspire design for like an attack or something like that.
Yep.
Some more Senna stuff.
I just saw a question come up in the chat. Shnogi asks, would you add these to your reel?
I don't think I would, because it depends how good they are. Because like some of these, you know, obviously they're using the base texture, like the early textures. The rig is very early as well, and I don't spend too long on them. But I mean, if they were the best poses in the world, then maybe. But they're usually just useful for like internally, really, to sell ideas. I think adding poses to a reel is okay if they're like really good, because I think especially if you're applying for a job that's really stylized and things like that, and they really do need like these really dynamic poses, just knowing that you can do that stuff is good. But I guess it's always better to see it in motion, I suppose.
For sure.
I mean, for these specifically, they're just for internal use, just to share ideas and things.
Yep, great. I'll just say, chat, if you do have something you want to ask, please drop it in the chat with a Q at the beginning. A to the J has posted, is there going to be stuff useful for 2D animators to talk about as well? I don't know, Adam, some of the things that you're teaching here, can they transfer over to 2D, especially in the next sort of presentation that you've got?
I mean, the next one is probably not, because it's mainly in Maya and it's just me animating a pose cycle. So I think some of this stuff maybe you can take across. Obviously, you know, like when you're working with a team, making a pose sheet, maybe in 2D.
Yep.
You know, adding VFX. Some of them are, but for the next video, probably not.
Okay, not a problem. And Karina has asked, do you usually have things on the side for when you have waiting time on a project? I find that it helps me a lot with waiting times when I work. So what do you mean with that, Karina? Do you mean...
What do you mean, like things on the side, like other projects?
Or YouTube? Just waiting for something?
Just, Netflix.
Cycles, walks, small stuff. Yeah, I think if you just work on other things while you're waiting.
So you're saying like if I'm waiting for like a rig or something or a model, do I just work on some walk cycles and things?
Or in between projects, by the sounds of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not super consistent with that stuff. Like I'll usually just do one thing. I just get like waves of inspiration, and I'll just think of an idea. I mean, I'm always I have a document with just a lot of different ideas that I want to do. So when I do get time, I will kind of try and pick one of those up. Mainly for me, like most of my free time, I try to like make games and things in Unity and Unreal. I much prefer making, probably not the best thing to say on an animation stream, but I prefer actually making games in my spare time, you know, like prototypes and things, than doing personal animation. But that's probably just because, you know, I do personal animation all day at work. Sorry, not personal, but I do animation at work all day. I think it's good just to have something that isn't animation. Am I still?
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, I didn't know if you could hear me. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, sorry. So this one is the cube pass, which, you know, some people do, but I use it a lot. I started mentioning it if you don't. This is a really old workflow breakdown video I did years ago. But I just used it because it's an example of using a cube to plan out animations. I just find it really speeds things up because, you know, you're not worrying about limbs, you're only really worrying about the main feel of the animation. So if I ever have like a long shot like this, or just a big action, like if it's an attack that's really big, I usually use a cube first, just to get the timing down, basically. And then you kind of already have that. You don't need to worry about all the small parts like the secondary motion or the arms and legs, and it's just trying to get the overall shot.
Yep.
And that always speeds up my process.
Awesome.
It's got a couple more. Melon Python. This is a Maya one. This is like, you don't have to be an expert at programming for this. I'm not saying like learn Mel or learn Python, but there are a lot of like, I think just understanding it and where to grab it is good. So for example, like here, I've selected all the controls. In the script editor, it just shows you here, right? Like, you know, that's what just happened. And then you can just grab that, turn it into a macro kind of thing.
Yep.
And then it will always select those controls in the same order, which is good for copying and pasting. So just kind of knowing where you can grab Mel things and make quick solutions for yourself.
Yeah.
And then I actually made when I was working on some personal projects, I made a animation exporter, so I could export animations. And the way I did that was just basically do the things I needed to do, like strip the rig down and delete namespaces and things.
Yeah.
And then I just copied the Mel basically from the script editor. And I had to tweak a little bit and Google some parts, but then I just had that. And every time I wanted to do it, I already had that little macro button at the top, and it would just do, like right now it's doing it right now. So it just, you know, exports the FBX.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be an expert to do that. You just have to know what you need to happen. And then you can just like grab the Mel from the script editor and kind of make a little list, and it will just do it all in order. And then,
right.
Yeah, it's just useful.
Yeah. And it saves time, right? I mean,
oh yeah, that saved me so much time. Yeah, because otherwise I would have had to do all those steps like one by one every time I wanted to export the animation.
Yep.
But with that, it was literally just one button press. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it saved me a lot of time.
Yeah.
And again, like, you don't have to be an expert, right? It's just it's just copy paste, really. Maybe some Googling, but
yep.
Yeah, once you have that, it massively speeds up workflows. And this is just more of a way of thinking about things if you're working in games. This is from another talk I did, but it's gameplay tells basically. With animation, you're kind of like, in games, you're not just trying to sell a cool looking animation. You need to sell all the gameplay tells in there, right? So with the owner here, you know, I tried to have everything of the sword pointing in this direction because I only have about 6 frames to sell where he's about to dash. I also added a sorry. Nice. So yeah, you see here too, I have this kind of like light thing going across it, like a sheen going across the sword, and that's also a gameplay tell to kind of visualize the timing of the attack. So that was kind of a pitch I did to design of, like, you know, to kind of tell the enemy when he's about to dash. So when the sheen gets to the end of the sword, that's when he dashes. Little things like that you need to think about, you know, maybe not right now if you're just starting out, but you know, something to keep in mind of how to shape things, how to pose things. Like here, right? I tried to make him into like a V shape, an arrow. It kind of tells you that he's about to dash this way.
Yep.
And then, you know, anticipations and leaning and things like that. It's just all kind of, you know, having the sword arc around this way like this to show that, you know, he's about to attack like this. Yeah. So
Yep.
like a lot of my job now, I feel like is more like a puzzle. It's not even animation sometimes.
Oh,
It's just
really?
6 frames to sell this attack.
Yeah.
And they need to know exactly what's about to happen. And like, okay, well, here's like 3
Fantastic.
poses. And
Yeah.
so yeah,
Awesome.
that's probably something if you get into games, you're gonna have to think about. So just trying to work on like directional poses and things like that.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it for that one.
Fantastic.